Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Bold and beautiful today. Ridge stops Nick and Brooke's wedding, grabs Brooke's hand and runs away. Brooke Logan, radiant in blinding ivory silk that whispered against her trembling form, stood poised at the precipice of her future, her hand resting lightly in Nick Marone's steady, reassuring grasp, her gaze fixed on the minister whose lips were forming the irrevocable words that would bind her to this good, solid, safe man, words that promised stability, respect, and a love built on mutual affection and shared history, a sanctuary after the hurricane of passion and pain Ridge Forrester had always represented. Yet, just as the minister's voice rose to its pivotal peak, the final syllable of "Speak now or forever hold your peace" hanging like a guillotine blade over the hushed assembly, the grand double doors at the far end of the aisle exploded inward, not with a creak, but with a thunderous crash that echoed like a gunshot, shattering the fragile serenity of the ceremony. And there, silhouetted against the harsh afternoon light flooding the vestibule, disheveled and breathless as if he'd sprinted across the city, his tailored suit jacket askew, his tie loosened, and his dark eyes burning with a raw, desperate intensity that cut through the room like a physical force, stood Ridge Forrester, not the polished tycoon, but a man stripped bare by primal need, his chest heaving, his gaze laser-focused on Brooke, ignoring the collective gasp that rippled through the guests like a seismic wave, ignoring the outraged sputter from his father Eric, the horrified widening of Stephanie's eyes, the protective tightening of Nick's fingers around Brooke's, the nervous shifting of the bridesmaids. He didn't pause, didn't offer apologies or explanations to the stunned congregation. He moved with the single-minded purpose of a predator locked onto its quarry, his long strides devouring the rose-petal-strewn aisle, his eyes never leaving Brooke's face, which had drained of all color, leaving her looking ethereal and terrified, her carefully composed bridal mask crumbling into an expression of bewildered shock and a dawning, terrifying recognition of the chaos erupting around her. He reached the altar in moments, a whirlwind of desperate energy, his presence radiating a heat that seemed to push back the cool, air-conditioned atmosphere, and before Nick could fully process the intrusion, before the security Ridge had undoubtedly bypassed could react, before Brooke could even form a coherent thought beyond the pounding of her own heart threatening to break free from her ribcage, Ridge's hand, strong and insistent, shot out, bypassing Nick entirely, and closed with unyielding firmness around Brooke's wrist, the contact sending an electric jolt through both of them, a current that crackled with years of shared history, whispered promises in moonlit gardens, fierce arguments that shook the Forrester mansion, devastating betrayals that left scars, and a love so deep and tumultuous it felt less like emotion and more like destiny, or perhaps a curse neither could escape. "No," he rasped, the single word ripped from his throat, raw and ragged, carrying the weight of 1,000 unsaid pleas and declarations, echoing in the sudden, tomb-like silence that had descended upon the room. "This isn't right, Brooke. It can't happen. Not like this. Not with him." His voice, low and urgent, was meant only for her, yet it carried in the perfect stillness, a desperate confession laid bare before God and the scandalized witnesses. "I know. I know I've hurt you. I know I've been a fool, blind, arrogant. I know I don't deserve you after everything." His grip tightened, not painfully, but possessively, anchoring her to him against the whirlwind he'd unleashed. "But this," he gestured wildly at the altar, the flowers, Nick's stunned, furious face, "this safety, this settling, it's a lie, Brooke. A beautiful, comfortable lie. You don't love him like this, not the way you burn, not the way we burn, even when it destroys us." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her cheek, his eyes boring into hers, demanding she see the truth he saw. "It's always been us. From the very first moment. Through every mistake, every heartbreak, every stupid decision I ever made, it was always leading back to this. To us. This isn't your future, Brooke. Your future." He swallowed hard, the vulnerability stark in his usually confident features, "is with me. It has to be. Come with me. Now. Before it's too late." The plea hung in the air, charged and impossible. Time seemed to fracture. Brooke stared into his eyes, a kaleidoscope of emotions warring within her, the ingrained sense of duty to Nick, who stood rigid beside her, his face a mask of betrayal and dawning fury, his earlier gentleness replaced by a cold, dangerous stillness, the fear of public humiliation, of becoming the talk of the town, the runaway bride, the crushing weight of the expectations of family, friends, society watching this train wreck unfold, the sheer, terrifying audacity of Ridge's demand. But beneath it all, roaring like a subterranean river suddenly breaking through to the surface, was the undeniable, terrifying truth he voiced, the truth she'd tried so hard to bury beneath layers of logic and self-preservation. The truth that Nick's steady, reliable love, however genuine, couldn't ignite the inferno Ridge effortlessly sparked within her soul, an inferno that promised both ecstasy and annihilation. She saw her life stretching before her with Nick, comfortable, predictable, perhaps even happy, and then she saw the chaotic, uncertain, alive path Ridge offered, paved with passion and peril. In that suspended second, the weight of the diamond on her finger, the perfection of her gown, the approving smiles of the guests, all dissolved into irrelevance. The only real thing was the desperate fire in Ridge's eyes and the magnetic pull of his hand on her wrist, a pull that resonated deeper than reason, deeper than fear. With a small, choked sound that was part sob, part surrender, Brooke's fingers tightened instinctively around Ridge's, a silent, seismic answer. It was all the confirmation he needed. In one fluid, powerful motion, Ridge pivoted, pulling Brooke with him, her veil snagging and tearing free, fluttering to the ground like a discarded dream as she stumbled for only a fraction of a second before finding her footing, propelled by his momentum and her own unleashed adrenaline. They surged forward, away from the altar, away from Nick, who lunged with a guttural roar of Brooke. "Stop," his hand grasping only air as Ridge expertly shielded her, pulling her close, away from Stephanie's cry of "Ridge, what have you done?" Away from Eric's stunned silence, away from the collective gasp that turned into a rising wave of shock and scandalized chatter. They ran, not with grace, but with raw, frantic energy, dodging a grasping usher, weaving through the sea of bewildered faces that blurred into a tapestry of outrage and fascination, the silken train of Brooke's gown tangling around her legs, threatening to trip her, but Ridge's arm was a vice around her waist, half lifting, half dragging her onward, his focus solely on the doors, on escape, on claiming their impossible future. The heavy oak doors, momentarily forgotten by the stunned security, stood slightly ajar, beckoning like a promise. They burst through them, the bright, unforgiving sunlight of the real world hitting them like a physical blow after the dim, perfumed artifice of the ceremony, the sudden warmth a stark contrast to the chilling drama they left behind. The sound of pursuit, Nick's furious shouts, the confused clamor of guests spilling out onto the steps, car doors slamming, was swallowed by the roar of a powerful engine Ridge must have left idling. He practically threw Brooke into the low-slung sports car, its door already open, a final, desperate piece of his reckless plan. He slammed her door shut, vaulted over the hood with panther-like agility, and slid into the driver's seat in one motion. The tires screamed against the pavement as he slammed the accelerator, the car lurching forward with neck-snapping force, peeling away from the curb, leaving the elegant chaos of the wedding venue, the furious groom, the shattered expectations, and the gasps of 100 witnesses shrinking rapidly in the rearview mirror. Inside the car, the world was a deafening blur of speed and wind whipping through the open windows. Brooke, pressed back into the leather seat, her elaborate coiffure disintegrating into wild tendrils, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird, turned to look at Ridge. His jaw was set, knuckles white on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the road ahead with fierce determination, but beneath the adrenaline-fueled intensity, she saw it, the echo of the vulnerability he'd shown at the altar, the desperate gamble he'd just won, or perhaps merely initiated. They had escaped the ceremony, but they were now hurtling headlong into an uncertain, scandalous future, the echoes of Ridge's desperate plea, "Come with me. Now. Before it's too late," still ringing in the space between them, not as a question anymore, but as the irrevocable first step on a path they had chosen together in a single, world-shattering moment of stolen destiny. The road ahead was unwritten, paved with consequences they couldn't yet fathom, but for now, in the roaring silence of their flight, there was only the shared, breathless reality: he had stopped the wedding, he had grabbed her hand, and they had run. Everything else was a storm they would face together. After Eric reveals something shocking about Nick, Katie interrupts to needle Taylor. There are further flashbacks as Brooke remembers moaning to Ridge about their separation the day before while she was in her suite. Eric reminds Ridge in a different suite that time is running out and Nick won't accept no. Although Brooke is Ridge's true love, Eric recognizes that Ridge wants to keep his word to Taylor. Ridge makes an effort to persuade himself that Brooke is independent and will not fall for Marone's nonsense. Taylor is safe and predictable, while Brooke makes your heart race, Eric tells his son while sporting a bright pink button-down and puffy vest. Fortunately, Ridge prevents him from continuing down that path. Eric is unfazed and asks Ridge to stop punishing Logan for becoming CEO. He needs to take action because he overreacted. When Ridge knocks on the door of Brooke's suite, she is not able to hear him because she is wearing earphones. He gives up. As Eric shows there, Nick ogles the engagement diamond inside a ring box he neatly pulls out on the dock. When the Forrester patriarch learns that Nick intends to propose to Brooke without courting, his mouth drops to the floor. As Brooke reads a charming text from Nick in her suite, Eric raps on the door, upset, saying he's trying to find Ridge. Eric cuts to the chase when she rambles on about Naples and cautions her against allowing Nick to exploit her weakness. He begs haphazardly, "Don't give in to Nick." Brooke leaves him standing by himself in her ex-husband/father-in-law's room after declaring that's who she's going to meet. Brooke Logan, the Mediterranean sun streaming through the windows doing little to dispel the chill of loneliness that had settled deep within her bones. As she absently traced the rim of her coffee cup, her mind catapulted back barely 24 hours, replaying the raw, tear-streaked confrontation with Ridge in vivid, painful detail. She could still feel the plush carpet beneath her bare feet as she'd paced, the frustration bubbling over into accusatory words flung at the man who held her heart, yet remained perpetually just out of reach. "We're here, Ridge, in this beautiful place, and yet we're further apart than ever. Why are we not together? After everything, after all these years, these battles, these reconciliations, why am I standing alone?" Her voice had cracked, the vulnerability laid bare, the unspoken fear resonating louder than her words. Am I not enough? Ridge's conflicted expression, a familiar torment of duty battling desire, offered no solace then and haunted her now. He'd murmured promises about needing space, about complications, but the core message was agonizingly clear: for now, Brooke was not his choice. This painful flashback wasn't just a memory, it was the fertile ground upon which Nick Marone's attentive charm and unwavering declarations were taking root, a desperate antidote to the profound rejection she felt radiating from Ridge's withdrawal. Meanwhile, mere corridors away in another lavishly appointed suite, the air crackled with a different kind of tension, thick with paternal urgency and simmering frustration. Eric Forrester, patriarch and perpetual meddler in his children's turbulent love lives, loomed over his son, Ridge. Dressed in a distractingly vibrant pink button-down shirt tucked into crisp slacks, topped with a lightweight, slightly puffy vest, an ensemble that somehow managed to look both incongruously casual and intensely serious on the dignified elder Forrester, Eric was a man on a mission with a ticking clock only he could hear. "Ridge, the clock is ticking, son," Eric insisted, his voice low but forceful, his finger tapping an impatient rhythm on the polished mahogany desk. Nick Marone isn't the type to take no for an answer indefinitely. He sees an opening, and he's moving in with the speed of a shark scenting blood. Eric paused, his expression softening momentarily with a paternal understanding he rarely showed Ridge in matters of the heart. "Look, I understand," he conceded, the words seeming to cost him effort. "I understand you made a promise to Taylor. You feel responsible, you want to make good on that, provide stability after everything she's been through." He leaned in slightly, his gaze locking onto Ridge's. "But Ridge, look beyond the obligation for one damn minute. Brooke. Brooke is the love of your life. The fire, the passion, the history that binds you two, it's undeniable. Taylor. Taylor is safe. Taylor is predictable. She's the comfortable harbor after the storm." Eric's eyes held a rare intensity. "But Brooke? Brooke makes your heart race. She always has. She's the storm and the sunshine." Ridge visibly recoiled, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face at his father's blunt romantic assessment. Dad, please, he interrupted, holding up a hand, thankfully stopping Eric before he could venture further down that uncomfortably personal and emotionally charged road. Undeterred by his son's discomfort, Eric shifted tactics, his voice regaining its stern edge. And this vendetta against Brooke for taking the CEO position? It's beneath you, Ridge. You overreacted. Dramatically. Using that as an excuse to push her away, to punish her for stepping up when you felt slighted? It's petulant, and it's playing right into Nick's hands. You need to swallow your pride and do something about this situation before it's irrevocably too late. Stop punishing her for your own pride. Ridge met his father's gaze, his own eyes a turbulent sea of conflict. The weight of Eric's words, particularly the jarringly accurate Brooke, makes your heart race, warring violently with his ingrained sense of duty to Taylor and his wounded ego. The internal battle was raging, but indecision remained his shield. Fueled by a potent mix of his father's goading and his own tumultuous emotions, Ridge found himself standing outside Brooke's suite door, his fist raised to knock. A surge of something, regret, longing, a desperate need to reclaim what felt lost, propelled him forward. He rapped sharply, the sound echoing in the plush hallway. Inside, Brooke, seeking solace in music to drown out the cacophony of her thoughts, was lost in a playlist piped directly into her ears through noise-canceling earbuds. The rhythmic beat and soaring vocals provided a temporary escape from the emotional maelstrom, the sting of Ridge's rejection replaying, the confusing warmth of Nick's attention beckoning. She swayed slightly, eyes closed, completely unaware of the man standing just feet away, separated only by the thick wooden door, the man whose presence usually sent seismic shifts through her world. Ridge waited, the silence from within stretching into an eternity of awkward seconds. He knocked again, louder this time, leaning closer, hoping for any sign of movement. Nothing. The closed door, coupled with the utter lack of response, felt like a physical manifestation of the chasm that had opened between them. His shoulders slumped, the brief flare of resolve extinguished by the silent rebuff. With a heavy sigh that seemed to carry the weight of their entire fractured history, he turned away, retreating down the corridor, leaving Brooke blissfully ignorant of his aborted attempt at connection, another missed opportunity adding to the growing pile of misunderstandings and hurt. Down on the sun-drenched dock, where luxury yachts bobbed gently in the sparkling turquoise waters of the Bay of Naples, Nick Morone stood, a picture of confident anticipation. The salt-tinged breeze ruffled his hair as he gazed out, not at the breathtaking vista of Vesuvius in the distance, but at a small, velvet-lined box cradled in his palm. With a practiced flick of his thumb, he opened it, revealing a solitaire diamond engagement ring. The stone caught the Mediterranean sun, exploding into a shower of dazzling prisms that danced across his face. It wasn't just a ring, it was a statement, a weapon, a promise designed to shatter the lingering ghost of Ridge Forrester. Nick's eyes, usually sharp and calculating, held a rare, almost possessive gleam as he admired the jewel. He wasn't contemplating courtship, he was visualizing the endgame, Brooke Logan wearing his ring, bound to him, a triumphant victory over the Forresters, a permanent claim staked on the woman who had captivated him. His lips curved into a satisfied smile. The timing felt perfect, her vulnerability a key he intended to turn decisively in his favor. He was utterly absorbed in this moment of scheming triumph, the ring sparkling like captured starlight in his hand, completely unaware that his meticulously planned ambush was about to be spectacularly ambushed. It was at this precise moment, as Nick stood bathed in sunlight and self-congratulation, the symbol of his audacious intent glittering openly in his hand, that Eric Forrester, seeking perhaps the sea air to clear his head after the frustrating encounter with Ridge, stepped onto the dock. His gaze, initially sweeping the picturesque scene, snapped into laser focus as it landed on Nick. More specifically, it locked onto the unmistakable, open ring box in Nick's hand and the obscenely large diamond winking within it. Time seemed to distort. The gentle lapping of the waves faded into a dull roar in Eric's ears. His breath hitched, then stopped entirely. The color visibly drained from his face, leaving his usually robust complexion ashen. His jaw, set in its characteristic firm line just moments before, literally dropped open, slack with pure, unadulterated shock. It was a jaw-dropping moment in the most literal sense. Every paternal alarm bell Eric possessed clanged with deafening urgency. This wasn't just dating, this wasn't even a serious courtship, this was a full-blown, premeditated proposal. Nick wasn't just circling Brooke, he was preparing to swoop in and claim her permanently, exploiting her heartbreak over Ridge with terrifying speed and precision. The realization struck Eric like a physical blow. The clock hadn't just been ticking, it had exploded. His son's indecision, Brooke's vulnerability, and Nick's ruthless opportunism had collided catastrophically on this Italian dock, and the evidence was blindingly obvious in that damn sparkling stone. Panic, raw and immediate, surged through Eric, overriding every other thought. He had to act. Now. Back in her suite, Brooke had shed the earbuds, the music replaced by a different kind of flutter, the buzz of her phone. A text notification glowed on the screen. It was from Nick. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. The message was characteristically Nick, warm, effusive, painting vivid pictures of the evening he had planned for them, laced with compliments that felt like balm on her bruised ego. Can't wait to see your smile light up Naples tonight. You deserve magic, and I intend to deliver. Every moment with you reminds me.